There are multiple interpretations of the Mongols from all over the world, some of them stemming from these demonic creatures that just ran through cities and made things hellish for the citizens. Some of them was just an organized empire with the mindset of world domination. Others see it as an empire that was split from the beginning and continued to be split forever. But what could possibly split it? Everybody knows that, which by the way, we're going to explore the split idea. Everybody knows that the thing that splits you is point of view. And Mongols, since the beginning, did not have the exact same point of view. For example, Kublai Khan was a Buddhist, Burqa Khan was a Muslim, and Nayan Khan was a Christian. These three religions would be expressed within the empire, and they would play in both its creation and destruction. Take the Karaites, for example. The Karaites were one of the few factions that made up the Mongols. And this Karaite clan had converted into Christianity. Now, it's not obvious if their leader converted to Christianity, but their leader was directly related to Genghis Khan, and in fact interfaced with Genghis Khan while he was still alive. Did this make any difference? Well, it did to the rest of the world, because there was rumors that were spreading around the world that there is a Christian set far in the east who had come to save the West from the Muslims. Now, this might have been based on rumors because, of course, there was no such person in the East. Even though there were Christians in the East, as far as Korea, there was no person who came to save them. In fact, they came to conquer them. Torul, the brother of Temujin, who was in charge of these Nestorian Christians known as Karaites, was anything but interested in helping Europe. But he didn't come without his own problems. Firstly, his brother, Genghis Khan, isn't exactly a pushover, and Genghis Khan's real name is Temujin, and Temujin would also be very allowing of many religions. So he wasn't exactly, that forced in or that strict about certain things. This is probably why it allowed their culture to become such a global world so early. Now remember, at this time, the Muslims had already taken over much of the world. They had taken pieces of Africa, pieces of Europe, obviously Asia, and their trade partners went as far as Australia. And this would be very important if you talk about the Khans and how the Mongols planned to invade the world. But if faces like these were the original faces of the savior, Prester John, then how did Prester John end up becoming a black African from Ethiopia? Well, first things first, they needed to explain in this myth why he came from a completely different place, but still remained Christian and valid. And so they said he was one of the three magi. But this Ethiopian looking Prester John is a clear copy of the older Asian Prester John. Now, both of these people do not exist and never did. This was just a fantasy invented by Europeans to comfort them against their enemies that were coming hard and fast. Now, we could get into detail about how deep this went, but let's move on to Burqa. Burqa became a Muslim mainly because of his wife, and he's one of the earliest of the Mongols to become a Muslim. When he became a Muslim, he started putting in Islamic thoughts, rules against females doing specific things like Muslims would. And this, of course, changed how he would interact with his own relatives who themselves were not Muslim. To keep the timeline up, I want to tell you this is way after Genghis Khan. Burqa Khan was one of the first, but he was the third son or the grandson of Genghis Khan. So, in other words, he was the son of Genghis Khan. Nasir al-Tusi was an Islamic scholar who dealt with both engineering and space, and like most Islamic scholars, was a polymath. And he is thought to have, and later he did, absolutely work with the Mongols in crushing other Islamic areas. And his reward was he was put as a financial leader of the finances of religion within the Mongol Empire. This has led some people to believe that he was instrumental in the siege of Baghdad. Now, another way the story plays out is that he played into the superstitions of the Mongols, namely Hulegu Khan at the time, and that's how he saved his skin. And not to be left out, the African Mamluks would draw in Mongols, and some of these Mongols from the Golden Horde would convert to Islam when they finally arrived in Africa. There will be more detail about what happened in Africa during the times of the Mongols, but not today.